All right. Wisdom beyond the classroom. And we are here to accelerate our learning and chase down dreams. And we are very honored to have Tricia Cooper on here, restoration coach. And there's a lot that goes into that. I know that personal training and life coach, and it's all about helping people physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And we're really going to break this down with story, with struggle, and with strategy. And Trish and I just were able to spend a little bit of time together, and her story is remarkable. I know that she has a lot of wisdom to share. And so let's get into it. Tricia, thank you so much for being here.
I am
And
so honored. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Your message is beautiful. I know it's gonna touch lives here. And so let's get into your story.
Okay. All right. So I am a restoration coach. And what that does is I guide and mentor people back to their physical health and wellness,
Hmm.
into their mental discipline, emotional awareness. And then it brings you into the spiritual balance of your revelation, your purpose, your calling, kind
Hmm.
of your aha moment.
Hmm.
And then what that does is it helps to transform and guide you into a healthier relationship with yourself so
Hmm.
that you can have healthier relationships outside of yourself, with your family, with your friends. And people are always thinking, I want to change the world. How do I change the world?
Hmm.
The first thing that we have to change is our hearts and how we feel about ourselves and where we get our laws from. And one of the things that I ask my clients is, where do you get your laws from? And oh my gosh, they can talk about their laws, but then I'm like, well, your laws are where do you get your love, your acceptance, your worth, and your security from?
Hmm. I love that. And yeah, that's so true. That's awesome. How did you become a restoration coach? Like, take us back and a little bit of the journey of like how you got into doing that.
So first of all, let me just tell you, I have been a runner all my life. I've been a
Hmm.
runner since I was about 7 years old. um, physically. I'm a marathon runner, a half marathon runner, triathlete, Spartan racer. I love running. But through that running, I found out that I was also an emotional and a mental runner as well.
Mm.
And so all those long hours pounding the pavement, it taught me a lot about myself.
Yeah.
And so about 20 some odd years ago, I went through a terrible divorce, and we had four um, beautifully amazing children. And then maybe 3 years, 2 years after our divorce, I got married again.
Mm.
And that only lasted a year, and that was another tragic divorce.
Mm.
And my life has been just a struggle of a lot of bad choices. I've been a victim all my life. All of
Mm.
my choices came because I never held myself accountable in my own
Mhm.
choices and my circumstances, and everything, you know, was everyone else's fault. It was never my fault. And about that time, what I started to do was I just started to do a lot of self reflection
Mhm.
as I was pounding the pavement.
Yeah.
And I found out that I didn't like myself
Mm.
at all, like at all. And I didn't like who I was, who I became. I didn't like myself as a friend or as a mom. And so what I would do is I would go run or I would go work out, and I would physically deplete myself
Mhm.
until I had nothing left. And then I would go into my classes and I would teach classes or personal train. And then I would share my revelations
Mhm.
and kind of like my aha moments with my clients. And they'd be like, what the heck? I felt that way, or I feel this way, or I'm going through that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, I don't know if I can really say that it's true that misery loves company, but
Mm.
it was
Right.
like I felt like I wasn't alone in that.
Mhm.
And so about 15 years ago, I started to develop this program. I was stuck. I was stuck
Mhm.
in my life and I knew I just needed something new. So I developed this program called Stripping the Core, the
Mhm.
Journey series, Stripping the Core. And what it did is through these 27 postures, it transformed my life into finding purpose in my life, finding identity in my life, and then finding out that I really liked me,
Mhm.
and that I really then grew to love me.
Mhm.
And then through that, I grew to love, because I loved myself so well, I started to love other people very well.
Mm.
And that started to transform lives. I have not looked back, and I have not moved on, but I've been able to move forward in
Mm.
such a healthy way that um, many years ago, I used to despise women and hate women because I never had healthy relationships with them.
Mm.
Now I can say I have a community of women that I love. But not only that I love, but that love me back
Mhm.
sincerely. And that has been probably the most beauty from ashes,
Mhm.
for me. You know, my broken messes into a restoration message has been amazing. And so
Mm.
that's how I guide my clients, restoring them back to, again, physical health and wellness, mental discipline, emotional awareness, and spiritual balance into a healthy relationship with self, and then changing the world by loving well.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. So it really does, what's standing out to me as you talk about that is that quote from Gandhi that says, "Be the change you wish to see in the world."
Yeah.
And it really does come down to, you know I guess your internal and the way you treat yourself and you love yourself, and then that's going to be an outward reflection. um Otherwise, you and I had talked about this a little bit. If people want to go out and do something big in the world or get their 15 minutes, I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done internally first, right?
Yes. And I think that that whole internal thing is I was humbled. I lost everything,
Mm-hmm.
lost my marriage, lost my children,
Mm-hmm.
in that. And that was humbling. I lost sight of who I was, any kind of purpose that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And through that humbling, we have this why me mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I have to do this? Now I say, why not me?
Mm-hmm.
Why not me?
Mm-hmm.
Because and what I look for in the tragic circumstances in my life now is, how can this life test, how can this help others? And I shared with you that 2.5 years ago, my husband passed away on
Mm-hmm.
Christmas Day, and he had ALS. And we found out in August 8th, that he had ALS, and he passed away 4 months later on Christmas
Mm-hmm.
Day. And so many tragic things happened after that. But what it has done is my faith and my trust in God. A lot of people came to me and said, okay, she's going to fall apart. Her faith is going to fall apart because God did not save her husband and she was banking on that, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And that tragedy made me have more purpose,
Mm-hmm.
that people need to know that just because tragic circumstances happen in our lives, it doesn't mean that we don't get out of bed. It doesn't mean that we don't take care of ourselves. It doesn't mean that we
Mm-hmm.
don't take care of our children or the things that have been entrusted into our care. That's
Mhm.
not what that means. For me, what it meant was, how am I going to pull up my bootstraps and move forward in my love, my acceptance, my worth, and my security, and continue not just to love myself, but to love others well, and not, grief happens to us, Ryan, in so many different ways.
Mhm.
We grieve losing a job. We grieve losing our freedom of
Mm.
being able to walk into a grocery store without masks. And
Mhm.
I think that as we grieve divorce and, grieve losing people to the pandemic, we can either be victims of it or we can be victorious through it.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that my husband passed away and my life has been amazing. I have
Mhm.
had some broken days.
Yeah.
But what I have had in those broken days is this faith that there's something more in the tragedy of life.
Mm.
And the more is, how can I help people?
Mm.
How can I love them well, while still being humbled in this?
Mhm.
And so when we go through hard circumstances, it is a humbling, but we can embrace the humbling and be better for it, or we can embrace the humbling and get mad at it and be a victim of it and say, why me, and want other people to take care of us.
Mm. It's so true. Um, Perspective changes everything, right?
Everything.
Perspective changes everything. And sometimes, like you said, with what has happened in your own life and your experiences, that sometimes it takes some big things in life to change your perspective, right?
Yes, it
Hmm.
really does. And, you know, um, I grew up having everything. I was kind of spoiled when I grew up. So when I went into the relationships, I kind of threw this tantrum if I
Mm.
didn't get what I wanted. And so that whole victim mentality with children and young adolescents these days, it's so much hyper steroid for them,
Mm.
because it's like, I need internet quickly, I need to get on, TikTok, or I need followers, and I need likes, and I need this. And if
Hmm.
they don't have that, they feel like their whole world is just crushed.
Mm.
And so I I feel like we need to just step back from that and be able to be present in, what's the perspective here?
Hmm.
And when I think of that good perspective, I think, do my actions not just help myself, but help others?
Mm.
Is what I'm pursuing have purpose of goodness in it?
Hmm.
And does what I'm doing, is it the right thing, and is it moving forward with integrity? And does
Hmm.
it let other people know that they matter?
Hmm.
And a lot of times when I think of humility, um, this is my quote. When I
Hmm.
think of humility, I think of C.S. Lewis when he said, "Humility is not thinking of ourselves less, or thinking that we are less than, but it's
Hmm.
just thinking of ourselves less." And there are
Mm.
times in my day that I don't have it all together, and I have to say, Tricia, get out of the way, because it's
Mm.
not about you. It
Yeah.
might be about how I parent my children and what's best for my children,
Mhm.
especially as a mom with older kids, and they're making their own decisions. And I have one in Boston and one in Dallas and one and another one in Texas. And I'm just like, I
Mhm.
want them to be by me, and I want their
Mm.
decisions to be made around what I want for them.
Right.
And that just can't be as a parent. But I can't, I can't manipulate it and say, well, I'm alone and I want you to be. I think that parents, we do that to our children. We make our children, you know, feel guilty about some of their choices
Mhm.
instead of looking at our children and just saying, where's my child at? Can I
Mm.
meet them where they're emotionally at, not
Mm.
where I'm emotionally feeling? And I
Mhm.
think that that's a tragedy that we do to our children. We treat them like adults because we see them on all this adult social media in this adult social media world,
Mhm.
and we don't meet them right where they're at,
Mhm.
really mentally and emotionally immature, and guiding them through that.
Mm.
And I think it's sad for our kids these days that parents don't take the time out to disconnect so they can connect.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, very well said. A lot of it comes down to taking the focus off ourselves. I think there's a really good example of where your kids are at in different parts of the country, and you want them to be closer. And but when you change the perspective of like what's best for them, it's just that's not. I guess that's just not a reality. And so then for you to change your perspective of being there and being the best mom that you can be, I mean, it just changes everything.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you for sharing that. As far as a strategy, and you're talking about, and it's so true here with social media, and if getting likes, and if we don't get those, or if we don't, if our expectations aren't met, then we can feel like we're crushed. Um, and a lot of that is about giving our power away, right? These are things that are outside of our control.
Yeah.
um, and so I guess strategy wise, what would you recommend to, and I think that was a really good recommendation for parents and just the way they think of things. But what would you recommend to the adolescents of today, as far as um, just having more perspective and some inner work, if you will, so that it's not always about what's happening outside of ourselves.
Well, when I think of what's happening outside of ourselves, boundaries are important and they're
Mm.
healthy.
Mhm.
And I have a son that is a sociology master's psychology major, but
Mm.
he is the son, he's my 28-year-old son that pushed the envelope to every nth that he could push it.
Mhm.
And when he went through all of his schooling, he
Mhm.
was like, I really needed those boundaries. Boundaries
Mhm.
are healthy and
Mhm.
boundaries. And so now, as I, parent my 15-year-old daughter on my own, he's always, putting boundaries around my parenting and
Uh-huh.
boundaries about what she does on social media and, how she thinks about things and how she's reacting with friends in school. So if I was to share with young people, I would say that yes, you are going to step out of the bubble of what is safe for you. You're going to step out of it, and your parents are going to reel you back in.
Mhm.
But they're not doing it to be fun sponges. They're
Mhm.
not. What they're doing is they're doing it because they love you, because they've been there, done that, because they've made the mistakes, and all they're doing is they're loving you and putting those boundaries around you for your own safety.
Mhm.
But, you know, in that, I have to say this too, as the parent of those adolescents,
Mhm.
okay? I can tell my kids what to do, but unless they go through and push those boundaries, okay, they're never going to know how to fail. Parents, children need to know how to fail. As
Mhm.
long as you're there as that safety net, but you
Mhm.
cannot be an enabler and you cannot be that strict, you shouldn't be that strict parents that says you can't, you're in this bubble and this is the bubble you're going to stay in, because they're going to be 18 years old, they're going to go out on their own, and they are not going to have any teachable moments to go back to with you if you didn't let them fail on their own.
Mhm.
So, they're going to step out of that comfort bubble zone. Let them, but
Mhm.
be there so that it's a teaching moment. It's a
Mhm.
teaching moment. And I say that within respectful means. I mean, of
Mhm.
course, if they're doing something terrible to themselves, um, or hurting themselves, or drugs or alcohol, of course you're going to reel that in.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I'm honest with my children. I'm very honest with my children about how the things that I did. Parents, be raw and authentic and transparent with your children. Let
Mhm.
them know that you are not this master lording over them,
Right.
that you too made your own mistakes, because they look at you as looking down on them. when
Mm.
i when i parent my 15-year-old, or when I'm coaching my clients, I get into a posture of humility, because
Mm.
I want them to understand I see them and their pain matters to me. So,
Mm.
what I will do is, instead of master and lord over them, I
Mhm.
get into a posture that's beneath them or at their level.
Mhm.
And that allows their defenses to come down.
Mm. I love that. That's
Yeah.
that's really good advice. Wow. Um, and I think it's really important what you're saying as far as letting them fail, because you know what as you know, things that we quote unquote fail from. I mean, we learn from, right? Or
Yes.
hopefully we learn from and we grow from. So that's I think that's really really important.
Yeah.
You had mentioned with your restoration coaching, do you have kind of like an age, variance that you work with, or are you working with like a specific age group, or is it pretty open? What does that look like?
It's open, and the reason why it's open is because I do have children from the ages of 15 to 36,
Mm-hmm.
and I have been a parent since I was 25 and I'm 61.
Mm-hmm.
I have made a lot of mistakes, and
Mm-hmm.
so I have clients that have asked me to also train, mentor, or coach their children, because
Mm-hmm.
they trusted the transformation that they went through,
Mm-hmm.
that they knew that their child would also go through that. So I have done it as young as, golly, 9, 10 years old,
Mm-hmm.
um, all the way up to their adult children. And then for me to train anywhere from, 60 to 70-year olds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Wow. Yeah, your life experience and what you've gone through and being a mom for so many years, and being a coach and a personal trainer, you just have a lot of wisdom. And I would imagine that working one on one with somebody, it's powerful. Not only that, but just in speaking with you, um, I can tell and I know that you care. You really care, and like you mentioned, loving yourself, it isn't just about loving yourself, but it's about loving others well. And I think that those kind of things, they do take some time, and to have a coach uh, that's had this experience such as yourself. I mean, it goes a long ways.
Yeah, yeah. About 20 years ago, I um I think that was kind of maybe the pivotal point in my life where
Hmm.
I didn't feel like I had any worth, or, I my boundaries were totally broken, and I was in this very broken space. And the
Hmm.
broken space was to commit suicide. The world was
Mm.
better off without me.
Wow.
And that, was a little about 23 years ago. And I I mean, I was broken. I was
Hmm.
broken physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I hated myself and I hated people. I didn't trust anybody. And, everybody, I felt like everybody was out to get me. And I was just in this space of just broken mess. And I remember, I'm in this closet and got my Bible open, and I had researched for about 3 months about, suicide.
Mm,
And
wow.
would I be with God if I committed suicide, and,
Mm,
so on and so forth. But I was so miserable here that suicide was my only way out.
mm,
And I remember I felt tormented constantly. And I remember my son, my oldest son, who's 31, he's knocking on the door and he's like, Mom, can you come out? And I'm sobbing and I'm reading my Bible and I'm thinking, Lord, this is it. I'm done. And so he's, knocking on the door and I'm like, I'll be there. I'm coming out with no, I'm not coming out.
mm,
I'm just not coming out. And I remember he knocks at the door this one last time, and I'm in this passage in Psalms, and he says, Mom, you don't understand. Ryan and I, we need you. And that's his youngest brother.
mm,
And at that moment, like it pierced me
mm,
that somebody needed me.
mm,
And I think that we forget
mm,
that we have an impact in this world, not
mhm,
just as parents, but as friends and as
mm,
peers, that we can impact and inspire others. And I remember looking down at my Bible, and the passage that just like shot up to me in Psalms was trust in the Lord.
mm,
And it just hit me that my sons needed me,
mhm,
that I was needed, that I was still needed, even through all that torment and all that somebody needed me.
mhm,
And I got up, and I can honestly say that my life after that found purpose.
mm,
And my son, one is, wants to help people through mental health. And my
mhm,
other son is a physician
mm.
helping people
Amazing.
through, through, he's a DO, he's a doctor of osteopathic medicine at Texas A&M. And
Mm,
I just, what if I didn't choose life?
mm. Yeah,
My
wow.
boys both know that if I didn't choose life, they wouldn't be where they are today.
Mhm,
So it's not just about living, but goodness, it's about loving and loving yourself well. And when you love yourself well, gosh, you love others so well.
mm,
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
mm. Thank you for
And it
sharing.
brings
Wow.
freedom. Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for opening up. That's wow. I didn't expect to hear that. That's amazing. That is amazing. And
I wasn't, after all of our talks, Ryan, I really wasn't expecting to share it either. I know
mm,
that we had emailed about it, but I was like, oh, it's not supposed to,
mm, yeah,
and it just kind of resonated, and
mm,
something beautiful that I think
yeah,
somebody in your listening
yeah.
um, community needed to hear
I
today.
agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Thank you
yeah.
so much. What came to my mind as you were saying that is, I truly believe that we're on purpose for a purpose, and that life
Mhm.
is happening for us and because of us. And
Yes.
but that's a perspective, and there are things that happen in our life that can seem like we're so pigeonholed, like this is the only thing happening and I can't see past my tunnel vision. But this moment shall pass, and thank goodness that moment passed for you, because um, the rippling effect of you being needed as a mother, and then what your children have gone on to do and what you've done as a restoration coach. I mean, the rippling effect, you don't even know how far that ripple has gone, right? And I
Right.
think that's the case with people in general. Um, and the fact that we are here for, I think, reasons bigger than we even know. So thank you for sharing your story. That's powerful. Um, I have a couple questions to ask you kind of in the end here. One is, do you have, let's say, a mantra or a favorite quote or something like that that you love or you come back to?
Well, so my favorite mantra that I
Hmm.
penned 14 years ago in my journey series is to be comfortable, to be present and being uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And it's be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And it's about pushing through.
Hmm.
And I shared with you about that journey, traveling
Hmm.
from one place to another, taking a rather long time. Well, that's
Hmm.
what being comfortable, being uncomfortable is.
Hmm.
And then, I share this with my kids all the time. Another one is do the right thing, even when
Hmm.
it's the hardest thing. Do
Hmm.
the right thing
Yeah.
because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And then I shared with you before the C.S. Lewis humility is not thinking less of ourselves, but thinking of ourselves less.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
there's a lot of wisdom in all of that. And do the right thing. I think that, I mean, you could dive deep into that in a lot of levels, but if you're, let's just say you're not doing the right thing and you know it, I mean, that's an internal thing then. Like that's what you're carrying around with you. And it's like, that's not how you want to live. That's not how you want to feel inside, because that'll actually start to eat away at you as well, you know.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
those are all great mantras and quotes. The other thing I wanted to ask you here is, uh, if you could, let's say, travel back in time and give yourself a golden nugget of wisdom as a youth, as an adolescent, what would you tell yourself?
To be authentically you, to not, we're always trying to, when you're young and you're trying to be your friends or be in this peer group or be whatever, to be authentically you. You
Hmm.
were born to be um, different,
Hmm.
and being different is okay. I
Hmm.
wish I could have said that to myself so many times, that you're different, Trisha,
Mm.
and that's okay because you're being unique. And I think that we're afraid to be unique because then we aren't accepted as being different. We all have to be this clone of this pod, that we all travel like this, instead of saying, I get this pod, I respect this pod, but I I'm different and I'm
Mm.
unique, and my pod wants to do something, desires to do something greater than standing in. I want to stand out so that I stand up for something.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, that's really great advice, and something that takes a long time for people um, to understand and truly then live. And they're like, that's okay. It's good that I'm different and unique, and like I'm gonna accept that, embrace that. It does take a long time, and especially with everything with social media now and having a persona, or perceiving, how do I look compared to, how do others perceive me. And then a lot of times people put too much emphasis on that, right? So
Yeah.
being unique, being your own self, embrace that. It's that's powerful.
I think
um
that I shared with you that we're all masterpieces.
mhm.
And when we are masterpieces, we live this art life.
Mhm.
And I think about this daily. My art life is this: I'm authentic, I'm raw, and I'm transparent.
Mm.
That's my art life. When I'm authentic to myself, raw in my feelings and emotions, and transparent in how I love people, I am a masterpiece. I don't have
Mm,
to be anybody else. So live a masterpiece life. Live that art life that you were destined and purposed and, chosen to be. Choose to be authentic to yourself and raw in in your failures and your and in your strengths, and then be transparent in how you love yourself and love others well.
that's amazing. And as I shared with you before, we had talked about that. I'm like, that is amazing. Acronym ART, authentic, raw, transparent. And so you heard it here first, Tricia Cooper. And so, as I told you, if I ever use that, yep, I'm gonna say, yep, I learned that from Tricia.
Yay.
Um, Before we go, Tricia, where can people like what are you doing right now besides what you told us? What are you up to as far as if people want to follow you and get in touch with you and things of that nature?
So I am writing a book right now. It's a 52 week devotional of all my broken messes
Wow.
that have been restored
Mm-hmm.
into restoration messages.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited. It'll be done on my husband's death date on Christmas Day.
Wow.
And then it'll go to presses, and I'm hoping that it will be done on my birthday when I turn 62, maybe before in April. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited to share that. But otherwise, you can follow me on Instagram at the Journey Series Fitness, or Tricia Cooper on Facebook, and it's
Mm-hmm.
TRICIA. And you can email me at thejourneyfitness777 at gmail.com.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing when that comes out. I'm definitely going to keep in touch with you about that for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And so you've heard it here, audience. Tricia, you're amazing to have on. I love your story. Thank you for being authentic, raw, and transparent. And that vulnerability. I mean, that takes a lot of courage, and it sounds like you're very comfortable with that. It seems like you're practiced up on that, which is amazing because that is not sharing what you just shared about all of that. Um, that takes a lot of courage. So thank you for sharing that.
Welcome. You're
Yeah.
welcome. Thank
Yeah.
you. I think that people need to hear our stories. We all have a book on us. We
Hmm.
all do.
Hmm.
It's if we're going to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, as you
Hmm.
said, and courageous enough to share it, because someone might need you,
Hmm.
and
Mm,
you never know whose life you might be sharing when you
mm.
share.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Tricia, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to just keeping in touch with you and
Yeah.
watching the unfoldment of what you continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Absolutely.